Hey guys, it's Mary Lucia with an exclusive session here on 89.3 The Current with the Cadillac of songwriters and a dear friend for many years, Gary Louris. Gary, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've never been introduced as a Cadillac, but I'll take it.
Uh,
What would you be then? A Lamborghini, or would you
no,
be
I,
a
I would be an old.
hybrid?
I'd be an old Volvo that doesn't. Yeah,
The really square ones?
you got to start it with a wrench. So here we are. We've got members tuning in on their lunch hour to talk about your new record, Jump for Joy. Which congratulations, Gary, the man of quality. You never put anything out that's garbage ever.
Yeah, that's going to change.
Well,
I decided I'm going to start putting a lot of garbage out
yeah.
because I got to get rid of this stuff. It's got to go somewhere.
Well, interestingly enough, I read that you had these songs gestating for some period of time. And how old is the oldest tune?
Well, you probably read the little thing, but 2009, I think it was the song "New Normal," and I was just getting to know the digital world of recording, of Pro Tools, and so it's kind of electronic, but sloppy, but it all works in this beautiful way for that song. I love that song. I know a lot more about recording now, but I could never recapture whatever that was. So that was done in Minneapolis way back in 2009. Most of the other songs were written and recorded either in 2018. A couple songs were recorded for the Paging Mr. Proust record back in 2016, I think, as a demo. So, but so a little bit here, a little bit there.
Well, the new record comes out tomorrow, Friday, the 5th, and you are going to perform a couple songs. So why don't you play a tune and then we'll chat some more about the record and everything else.
Okay. This is probably the most unabashedly romantic song I've ever written, dedicated to my wife, Steph, and to anybody else who needs a good wedding song. Picture me by your side, that's where I long to stay, till the chestnut turns to gray. If you will follow me, ripples made, skipping stones across a quiet lake, like a dream from which we'll never wake, if you will follow me. We'll never lose our way, we count each day like the others. Home's only where you are, won't you take my
That is Gary Louris, live here for our current member session, follow with a new record, Jump for Joy. So I'm assuming, Garrett, that you got creative during COVID with your live stream performances. How natural did it feel?
It felt, I was reluctant to start it, Mary. I don't know. I felt like, everybody's doing it. I'm just, and then I found I needed it as much as maybe some people wanted to hear it from me. It was something to look forward to. I had to kind of reel it back because I wanted to do it all the time. And I found that maybe, unlike Tweety's where he does it all the time, I needed to space it out a little bit. But it felt very natural. And to this day, I've been doing them on my Patreon page, which I will plug, patreon.com/Gary Louris. I still do them on those. Occasionally, I'll do it on Facebook, but mostly on that. But yeah, I loved it. And just the feedback you get, any musician will tell you, the feedback I was getting just got me through.
And I mean, how close did you come to losing your mind, or did that help during the whole shutdown?
I didn't because, as I would think a lot of musicians would tell you, or artists, we are born isolators to begin with. I of course, this all was a terrible tragedy. Not making light of it, but
no, I know.
Being an isolator kind of comes naturally to me. And so it's not like I missed all those social engagements that I had because I didn't have them. And I made a point of not having them because I like being social, but I like the alone isolation time too. I get a lot more done. So that, I think I weathered it better than a lot of people did. And I think a lot of artists would say the same thing.
Now, you mentioned that the song Follow that you had written for a specific person in mind, or just the idea of love. As a songwriter, generally speaking, Gare, would you consider yourself more of a writer of fiction?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. And, I'll have somebody say, my wife will say, who's that song about? And I'll say, really, it wasn't about anybody in specific, or it might be a combination of people that I knew, but I'm not as autobiographical as some writers. I tend to write stream of consciousness, things happen, and maybe later I'll go, oh, that song's about this. And I've been working on different kinds of songs, and I do get a little more specific, but in general, the songs are kind of fill in the blank, whoever you want it to be about. Well, sometimes they're about me.
Yeah, well, I think if you mostly write songs that are fictitious, there's certainly a kernel of you somewhere in there. But there's also, I think, a skill you possess, which means you are able to imagine someone else's point of view, which a lot of people can't do.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I just know that there's two parts of songwriting for me. There's the inspired or spiritual kind of writing, something that comes from the unconscious mind, and there's something that's the craftsman side, and that's from the conscious mind, and that's the less fun part. But that's when you start getting more specific. But I try to get as much of the inspired side first while I can. And I think that's why I don't have story songs. I don't write like a Jack and Diane kind of song or things like that,
If only.
Yeah, I would.
If only. No, I really feel, too, that there's a sensibility of, I don't know how you approach writing a Gary Louris solo record or Jayhawks record. And do you see a distinction, or does it just feel like you just know inherently, this is going to go on one of my records?
I'd say 99% of the time, Mary, I just write, and I try to write the best song I can. Mm-hmm. And then songs seem to find their own place. They find their own home. You start going, well, this just doesn't feel like a Jayhawks song. There have been times where it's getting close to the time of recording. I got to write some more songs that I think are for the band. That has happened, but in general, I just write a song and it just finds its own place. whether it's, the same thing with the Golden Smog, certain songs we would you save your best stuff for this and use your B material for something else. No, you just kind of, certain songs found their own place. Like up at the song Until You Came Along, which is a Golden Smog song, actually started as a Jayhawks song. It was recorded for the Sound of Lies record, but it just didn't fit. Somehow it just worked better with the gang of goofy friends playing songs for fun,
Sound of Lies on the record is my favorite of all of your records.
It's we've basically been downhill since then, Mary. I think because I think we all. I say if you asked everybody in the band, and this was asked to me the other day from a journalist in Spain. They said, "What's your favorite Jayhawks record?" And with no hesitation, we would all say "Sound of Lies."
Are you really?
Yeah, I think it's just from start to finish. There's not one song I would take off. Almost every other record we've ever made, I look back after a few years and go, those 3 songs they're kind of not so good.
Well, that does seg nicely. There's a listener, Tom R., who does want to know what is up with Golden Smog these days, if you have an answer.
I do not, although my wife brought it up the other day. It's because we were scheduled to play a Golden Smog show. I believe it was at First Avenue, maybe, or the Palace in last April. And then, of course, COVID happened, so that was canceled. But I mean, and that was, Jeff was on board, everybody was on board. But now now that people are kind of gearing up for makeup shows and things, I don't know if how available everybody is. But that is something that actually was brought up yesterday, and I'm going to contact people because we would like to do it again.
That would be great. Well, how about you play another song? Which one do you want to do, Gare?
I'm going to do a song, a kind of a sad, I am kind of a master of the melancholy. Master of melancholy.
The sad bastard.
The sad bastard. Nobody ever says, let's go to a Gary Louris dance party. I mean, that's just never been said before. It's like saying, let's go to a Nick Drake dance party. That's just not going to happen. Okay, this is called Too Late to Key. It's kind of about wondering if it's too late for you to be open to love and all that stuff, all that junk. I can hear echoes, though invisible, across great spaces traveling far. My mind's eye sees the very first taste. My mind's ears hear a song sung in haste. Is it too soon or better yet? May you know no regret. Too confused and chaotic it seems. Too far off this elusive melody. The gate left open. Is there still hoping? Side of me. New distraction I employ, very same one I should avoid. Same state by a new light it burns. Magic potion lost, diminished in turns. The gate left open. Is there still hoping? Side of me. fit, my feet are wet. The gate left open, just there still hoping, sad to me.
You're listening to Gary Louris. It's a current member session here and anticipating the release of Jump for Joy. And we've gotten some really good questions from some of the members. Teresa wanted to know, Gare, would you rate yourself as someone who's inherently comfortable on stage, or is that something that you've had to consciously work at?
It's something that over time that has I've become very comfortable. After you reach a certain age, I think you say, "Oh, this is who I am," and love me or leave me, you know. And also, you start realizing the people who are come to see you already like you. So it's kind of better than getting up and giving a speech, which I hear is people. Some people are more fearful of having to get up and do public speaking than they are of death. So I have read that before. But you know, I'm generally a shy person. I think you'll find a lot of other musicians the same way. They're kind of uncomfortable off stage, but kind of more comfortable on stage. So although I don't feel myself, I would never consider myself an entertainer. You know, I'm not. Somebody's jumping around, and really, I'm no Springsteen or Liberace or, you know, anybody like that. I'm not a showy person, and I admire those people. But a lot of times when I watch the Grammys, I think, what do these people do? Because they're doing something completely different than I do. So I feel myself more. It's not my favorite part of my job, to be honest with you. I think creating is the most exciting part. But I have become more comfortable on stage than off almost.
I watched a documentary about Nina Simone, and I think one of my hugest takeaways from it was that she considered herself to be in show business. And if you think of her and her career and everything she did and stood for, it was like, really? Like, yeah, I'm in show business. So now whenever I have to fill out an application and it's like occupation, it's like show business. And then no one bothers to ask what does that mean?
I love that. Yeah. I feel more like I'm a therapist than I am an entertainer, because I feel like sometimes I make people feel better, but it's not because I'm a song and dance kind of guy.
Hey, John has a question. He said, with respect to writing, what song came really easily and which one was really hard of yours?
Well, you know, that's a good question. A lot of times the really good ones, not all the time, come really quickly. Yep. For instance, Blue. I did not struggle with that in the least. And that happened bang, bang, bang. Of course, then you say, well, why did you write another one? I'm like, I've tried. And see, that's the problem. I tried. I wasn't trying when I wrote. And then it's, for something like I'm Gonna Make You Love Me, which I came up with, this whole part, all that part, all up to the chorus, super fast. And then I got stuck on the chorus. I had something that the label at the time said, this is the single, we love this, but the chorus is kind of a letdown. So then I started writing. They said, why don't we find somebody to co-write with you? And I didn't really do that at the time. I said, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it with people I know and like. So I took that song to Paul Westerberg. He and I sat down and wrote a chorus. Perner, Dave Perner, Jacob Dylan, Kirk Johnson from Run Westy Run, a lot of my people I knew around there. And it was really interesting to go through that process and see how each person approached the writing. Some people, I won't single them out, approached more like a classic country writer. Like, what is this about? What are we trying to say here? Other people, it was just like, what feels good. But none of them quite clicked, and I just kept trying to write chorus after chorus, and it was just becoming laborious instead of inspirational. So eventually, the label got me in touch with this guy, Taylor Rhodes, a professional songwriter in Nashville, and he, over the phone, we kind of wrote it. He came up with something. I, to this day, have still not met him. Isn't that weird?
Gary, aren't you a professional songwriter?
I am. and a licensed therapist.
Well, I would think that would be an interesting tip for any producer who's got an artist that's hit a wall. It's like, first, let's exhaust the people that you know and are comfortable with and are crazy talented. Then maybe I'll bring in some session person. It's a great idea.
We'll let you do your little thing, and then we'll bring in then we'll do what we're always planning on doing anyway.
So tell me a little bit about the Patreon thing, about what that's the live stream is about.
Well, Patreon is a page for people who don't know. It's a site where artists, you can become like a patron of the arts. So for me, it's you have a level of $5 a month, or you can go up to like $50 a month or anything in between. Really, but $5 is the basic. And every week I put something up, usually. I have something called Deep Dive, where I go into the song, maybe like All the Right Reasons or something, and maybe I'll talk about the writing of it and how it evolved, and then maybe play a song that I stole it from and talk about that and how songwriting. Or I'll have some old archival demos up there, or maybe some old footage or video, and then I'll do a concert once or twice a month. I was doing it on Facebook, and then I realized most people were just not paying anything. Yeah. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to make it a little more exclusive. So it's a cool site for people to feel like they're helping an artist without breaking their bank, you know.
Yeah. Let's get another tune and we'll chat some more. What do you want to play?
Well, I was going to play. I'm gathering. I was going to do one more new song and then a Jayhawks song. But if we're running out of time,
no, we're not.
Okay, good. This one is off my new record. This is called, and I will say this: want to make a public apology to the world that the age I am, which I won't say, been in the professional musician and licensed therapist since 1985. Actually, I was an architect before I was a musician, and I quit. I became a professional musician where I collected my paycheck for music in 1991. But let's say it's been 29 years or so, and I have put 2 solo records out, and I am ashamed. So I am planning on just spewing out the garbage. And,
right.
No, I hope to put a lot more out now that I've kind of gone, I don't need to have a big studio and hire a bunch of musicians and a producer. I can just do it myself. But this song, Almost Home, it's the first song. It was written initially when someone approached me to do a commercial for AT&T. So the idea, I'm far away, but I'm almost, when I hear your voice on the phone, it feels like I'm home. And to me, it was genius. To them, it was worthless or whatever. They just didn't use it. But it stuck around, really catchy. And then I said, well, I'm going to write. I just had the chorus, because the commercial is short. So then I rewrote it, made it a song. I wrote a verse and a little bridge, and that's what it is now. It's about being far away and missing people. Called Almost Home. Miles of empty skies and ever-winding streets, so incomplete and all alone. When I close my eyes, I always see your face. I hear your voice, I'm almost home. Well, I've always been in and out sort of fella, and my mind gets to roaming, I guess. But when I'm far away, nights, always checking flights, wrapped up in my sleeping bag beneath the city lights. Another rest stop, another toll, another time zone, another bowl. Miles of empty skies and ever winding streets, so incomplete and all alone. When I close my eyes, I always see your face. I hear your voice, I'm almost home. Across the water, longing to be warm. You're my shelter from danger, my anchor in the storm. It's hard to set down some roots when you've always got mud on your boots. When you've always got mud on your boots. Miles of empty skies and never winding streets, so incomplete and all alone. When I close my eyes, I will see your face. I hear your voice, I'm almost home. I'm almost home. I hear your voice, I'm almost home.
You're listening to Gary Louris. This is a current member session, and it's all in anticipation for Gary's second solo release, Jump for Joy. I got a couple of questions. I'm going to kind of paraphrase Thomas's question, who asks, if you find that the digital tools complement your songwriting process, or is it always something that you put on a song after? Meaning, I guess, where do you lay in the analog and digital world? I know they're kind of both necessary.
Yes. I mean, as much as I'd love to just be working with a big 2-inch tape machine in my room, don't think I could get it into the house. So the digital world is somewhat of a necessary evil. Mm-hmm. I don't fight against it as much as I'm have problems with being connected to devices all the time. I do enjoy the digital world. I don't think you'll ever get the sound that you get in the 70s tape, but there is a trade-off.
Yeah.
And I have used the digital world as a tool for writing and not strictly to add things on top. Mm-hmm. It depends on the song. And certainly there are different platforms, software platforms. There's one called Ableton Live, which is a little bit more DJ, a little more movie things where you can move sections around. We won't get too much into that. And Pro Tools. But, you can also use the digital stuff just like a tape recorder. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't rely on the digital stuff to make the song. For me, as I guess basically a song guy, I still rely on the song standing on its own. But that is not always the case, because I do love electronic music, and a lot of that stuff would not sound good if you just strummed it on an acoustic guitar. So I would say it's not an evil. I don't think digital world is evil.
No. Lynn said, we're from Buffalo, Minnesota, and Hollywood Town Hall was one of our stops on snowmobile poker runs. Why did you name the album Hollywood Town Hall?
Oh, that's a good question. We had spent 4 months out in Hollywood. It was we worked at the studio called Hollywood Sound, mm-hmm. which was pretty famous. There were two different studios right around the corner from each other that were both Hollywood Sound, and one was where Glenn Campbell did a bunch of his recording, and the other one was where Graham Parsons had recorded, and the Byrds, and a lot of famous stuff. But it was like a dumpy part of Hollywood, and we had been there for 4 months staying in these lousy apartments, and we drove back and came back, and then by then it was winter, and these two British guys came over from, I was going to say from England. Where else are they coming from? I suppose
Japan.
Japan. Well, that's possible. And they just, it was freezing cold. It was early January. I don't remember, and. They had said, let's just drive out of town and look for some stark landscape. And we found it. We just stumbled upon that place and said Hollywood Town Hall. And I guess we were just struck by the fact that here was the exact antithesis of the Hollywood we had just spent, and it doesn't really mean anything other than we just found it incredibly strange to see that, because if you see the town hall, it's all there is this building on a little crossroads, and I think there was a baseball field kitty corner to it, and that's about it. That's all. And so, I do remember that Rick Rubin, who's, if people know who Rick Rubin is, some people do, he's a pretty famous producer. And he was the head of our label, Deaf American at the time, became American. He called me and said, he was just he thought the image on the front of the record, thought it matched the music so perfectly. And it's true. Somehow it just looks right. But it looks like we're smiling in the photo, but we were grimacing. It was
grimacing
so cold.
of cold. Oh, yeah. God. I want to know. Okay, well, we have another great question here. This is great, Gary, that other people are asking questions, because you and I have talked so many times it would just be like, hey, when's the last time you saw Jim Boquist?
Which has been a while, I will say.
What? Michael wants to know who did the cool artwork for Jump for Joy.
Oh, I'm glad you opened that up. My son, Henry Louris.
Henry! And
you can totally plug him now. HenryLouris.com, and I think he has something on Etsy too now. He just graduated summa cum laude from Boston University in fine arts. He's a painter. Mm-hmm. He's also a musician. I'll be sending you some of his stuff eventually, Mary. But so he did that. It was just like a sketch he had. Never was done. He's not really an album art cover guy. He's like a fine arts guy. Right. But I just loved it, And then, so thanks for asking. Yeah.
That's
HenryLouris.com.
Cool. That is very cool. And I want to know, because not that this is the equivalency of Patreon, but have you ever in your entire life, Gary Louris, busked on the street?
Yes.
Really?
Once or twice. Well, we did it back our first trip, the Jayhawks. We went out to California. Mm-hmm. The first time we went to California, we drove across. We stayed at friends. We went through Joshua Tree. We recreated the cover of Joshua Tree, the album by U2, and it's really good. Then we went to L.A., and our first shows, this is probably 1987 or something, was there were two clubs, the Music Machine and the Club Lingerie were our first two. They're famous clubs in LA back then. And the first show was at the Music Machine, and they had thought we were the Jayhawks. It was reggae day. It was Bob Marley Day. It was all reggae bands, and we were billed mistakenly as the Jayhawks. So they put us on first, gave us a bag of McDonald's, and asked us to go on our way. The bands were great to us. But anyway, along the way, we played up in San Francisco, and the band busked. There are photos of that I'll put up on my Patreon, of us busking. And I think maybe I've done it one other time, maybe in front of First Avenue.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm constantly reminded of, you won't remember this. It was many, many, many years ago. I was having dinner, I think, with my brother and my pop at Black Forest, and you were there, and you came over to our table, and the introductions went by, and then when you left, he was like, "So who's your friend from the Seahawks?" My dad, of course, was, and we just let it go that, yes, he's plays for the Seahawks.
Yeah, we've been called the Jaywalkers too, Jaywalkers.
So let's get another tune, Garrett. What are you going to do? Yeah.
I'm going to do one because, we didn't really get to promote the XOXO record, which I found out the other day is actually, in Spanish, it's kind of a female body part. So it was a little bit controversial when it came. You got to be careful of the translation. I found that out recently. So I guess we're like edgy, controversial now. We didn't really get to promote the XOXO record very much because of COVID. So I'm going to play a song I know that the Current played a lot, called Bitter Pill. And I'm going to just have a cheat sheet here because I haven't played it well. Okay. eyes were crystal blue. When she stared, she'd see right through you. Toy with your emotions just for fun.
You are watching and listening to a current member session with the one and only Gary Louris. The record Jump for Joy, which will be out everywhere tomorrow. And Gary, remind us again where one can stream you and join your Patreon page.
Thank you for asking. www.patreon.com/Gary Louris. And my website's GaryLourisMusic.com. And of course, we're connected with all the Jayhawks social media platforms.
Cool. And then obviously you're just going to play it by ear in terms of anything that might happen in real time in front of actual human beings.
Yeah, well, we are going to Spain. The band is going to Spain starting in early July for a couple weeks. I might play play a few solo shows. Maybe go to a couple different countries. I have some shows. We have Jayhawks have shows at Lake Harriet Bandshell.
Yes.
Somewhere down in Iowa in August. I'm doing a solo show at the Astor Cafe that same weekend. I don't have the dates in front of me, but they're all at Jayhawks Facebook or jayhawksofficial.com. And so we're kind of easing way in. We're doing a lot of makeup dates. And, before all this COVID happened, I decided that I wanted to tour a lot more than we had because we'd kind of gone down to a trickle the last few years. So kind of wanted to step it up a bit. And so I think we're looking forward to making up for lost time, as everybody is.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. It gives everybody a little bit of hope. And thank you so much, Gary. Thank you to the current members for joining us.
Thank you.
Jump for Joy out tomorrow. Follow Gary and tour dates to be announced. And thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, Gary.
Always good seeing you, Mary. Bye.